Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today, I'm actually going to try to film this in a concise and succinct manner because I tried filming this topic earlier today and I listened back and I just thought it was just too disorganized and it took way too long, and I wanted to try to get these thoughts across because I think that you guys may be struggling with some of the same things that I was, and probably will again in the future. So, recently, I've just been feeling a little kind of just sick of making cards, just kind of burnt out, and I couldn't really understand why, because I have so many beautiful products to use. I have you know, wonderful companies I work with occasionally, you know, created some stamps from rubber stamp tapestry, and they are wonderful. And I've picked up stamps recently at a stamp show. I went to back early this summer, last summer, and they're sitting in a basket. I've barely used half of them, if that. And I was just kind of thinking, what is your problem, Lindsay? Why aren't you just like making cards left and right? And it kind of hit me last night while I was doing some scrapbooking. Now, I don't scrapbook like I used to. When my kids were little, of course, you're taking more photos, and scrapbooking not only is a way to preserve your memories, but it's also a way to create art while you're making something that's very practical in these little scraps of time that you have. And I remember when I started scrapbooking, I had everything I owned in a little tote, a scrapbooking tote. I don't know if you know what these are. I don't know if people still use them, but they look like luggage, but they were designed to hold your scrapbooking products. So it would hold the 12 to 12 album, some paper, you know, a paper trimmer, little pen slots for your pens, all the stuff you needed to create a page, or all the stuff we needed back in, you know, 2000 to create a page. Now we need a room full of materials and we hardly get anything done. At least that seems to be the case with me and other fellow scrapbookers that I used to scrapbook with. So I was working on a calendar. Every year I make my parents a little scrapbook calendar. This isn't embellished yet, but I've got just some, you know, some photos in, oh yeah, you can't see, that's off camera. My face looks yellow when I do that. So I've started it, and I was working on this last night, and I was having a great time, and you know, I was just using pattern paper and the calendar that I printed off the internet, and I'll leave a link to that in case you're interested. I have tutorials on how I make those calendars if you're interested. Very inexpensive, and you know, you're just using stuff you already have, so that's the best part of it. But anyway, and I was thinking about why don't I scrapbook more? I used to really love it. I used to really love it when all my supplies fit in one tote and I wasn't overwhelmed by choices. And I think that is kind of what I'm feeling with the card making now. Because I remember being like a teenager, and you know, school starts and you have your brand new school clothes and you're so excited by all the different outfits that you can make. It seems like you have all the options in the world, and then a couple weeks later, you look in your closet and you have nothing to wear. And you're just kind of like overwhelmed with all your choices, but you can't actually think of anything new to do with them. And I think that with scrapbooking, when we used to have all of our supplies that fit in a tote, and we had like a limited selection, that limitation gave us a challenge that we overcame, and we had a lot of fun, and we made our projects. We also got together in groups at scrapbook stores, and it was a community thing. And then I started noticing people not just bringing in one tote of supplies, they were bringing in 2, 3, they were bringing in big plastic tubs of supplies. They were, you know, bringing all of their stuff in and not creating anything, and then hauling it all back out again until they just finally gave up and decided that it was just too much work to drag all their stuff out, and they were going to scrapbook at home. And the scrapbook stores closed. People got so overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that they bought and hadn't used that they just stopped. They stopped because of overwhelm. And I feel like there's a danger of this happening in card making as well, in the card making world. If you look back, like back into the 70s, 80s, 90s, stamping has always been popular. It's always been a very kind of artsy endeavor. I was a stamper before I was a scrapbooker, and I did notice it was kind of like those worlds kind of clashed. I think the stamping world had more of this kind of slow, deliberate collecting aspect to it, kind of like somebody that collects postage stamps or collects you know, pottery or something like that, where you're really hunting and searching, and it's just a little bit different. There isn't so much available, so you can't consume so much, maybe. And when scrapbooking came out, there was an influx of products, and I remember, because at that time when I began scrapbooking, and I had been, teaching painting classes and, an artist before them, I started sending in my work to magazines to see if I could get it published. And it took a year before any magazine picked up anything. But what would happen a lot of the times was that the products I would use, I would buy something brand new at the store, I would use it, I would send it in. By the time the publication would have come out, any of the supplies I used would have been discontinued because they were churning products so fast. So if they released something at the trade shows in January and it hit stores in May, by the time you were able to buy it in May or June and you submitted your your layout to a magazine that was going to run in like September or October, that product would no longer be available to buy. So the magazines didn't want to run your layout. So it was that constant churn of products, I think, that overwhelmed people. And then people started to feel like, well, if I don't buy this paper now, I'll never get it again because it's going to be discontinued. Because they would, if they did see something in a magazine that was discontinued, they complained to the editors. The editor's like, I'm not dealing with that. Plus, their advertisers were advertising the magazine, so they want to promote products that are being advertised, which is understandable because that pays the bills. But that fast churning of supplies, like every 6 months, which at that time was, that seemed really fast, meant that if people wanted it, they had to buy it when they saw it, or they may never see it again. And it kind of like fostered this kind of FOMO, fear of missing out, in this frenzy that you better get it because you'll never get a chance to again. And then the big box stores started carrying all these products, and the sale, they would have 50% off sales and coupons, and people were just gobbling stuff up until they realized that they could never use what they had purchased. And now and it feels so much like fast fashion, and now with stamp companies, I see more and more new releases every month, products discontinued every month. You're afraid that if you see something you like and you don't buy it, you'll never get it again. And this isn't all companies. There are a lot of companies out there, like ones I just mentioned, that don't do that. They slowly add to their collection, and they only discontinue things after it's been out for a long time and interest has slowed down in it. They don't do this kind of like false sense of urgency, like you better buy it now because it's going to sell out and you'll never get it again. And that is what I'm seeing a lot now. And I can understand from the aspect that they're a business, and many of them are small businesses, and they're raising families, and they are, trying to keep the lights on and send their kids to school and all of that. And I understand that. But there's just so many companies, and I feel like the pool of stampers has been shrinking. And I'm just afraid that they are going to get burned out. And the other reason I can understand that these stamp companies release so frequently is that they are selling to the same pool of people. So they always have to have something new, or, you're not going to buy a stamp set twice because stamps last forever. So you don't need to buy it again. Once you've bought it, that's it. So they're not selling a consumable. They're selling something that you buy and then you have because you can use it thousands of times. So they do need to keep releasing new things. And then the other thing that's been very disheartening for these companies is that there are companies in China that are just ripping off the designs, finding their images, making their own stamp sets and selling them for a couple dollars a set on disreputable websites. I think like AliExpress comes to mind. I've never ordered from them, but I have seen knockoffs there. Not that I'm trying to promote them, because, I don't want you to run over and buy a bunch of cheap knockoffs. They're not made with the same product and the same quality, the same size. They're kind of a mess, I think. But still, that's something these companies have to worry about. So I don't want to come off as I'm saying, don't buy from these people, fast fashion. They're just ruining the environment. They're churning out all kinds of stuff. That's not really what I mean. But for me personally, that has been... you just feel like you can't keep up. And I'm not so concerned about being that trendy. Sure, paper crafting is something I enjoy, and I do several paper crafting videos a month. Some of them are sponsored. I wish the industry well, but that's the thing. I wish the industry well. I want it to survive, but I don't want it to survive at the expense of people who may be feeling that they're not good enough, or their projects aren't good enough because they don't have every single thing that's out there. One thing that drives me bananas is and if any of these products are valuable to you and you enjoy them and you like them, then please, buy them and use them. I don't mean to like be a party pooper or a wet blanket or anything, but I see like dyes that I'm like, really? How often are you going to use a walrus dye? You know, if you use it once, I mean, there's so many super specific tools, or just the same thing churned out in a different color or from a different company. It's like, how many nested rectangle die sets do you need? How many, you know, circles with dots or stitches or wavy lines? Or, I mean, it's just, there's such tiny differences between so many of these products that if you have them all, you're not going to use them all. You know, you're going to use your favorite. And I think that's part of it, because like you buy something one year and then maybe next year something cuter comes out, and then you feel bad that you didn't wait for this new thing. So you either feel bad and don't use your old thing because you're like, well, that's no good. There's better things out and I don't want to use this lame old thing. Or you go buy the new thing and then you kind of feel bad because you already bought the old thing, so you have both things. And you know, it's kind of like, where does it stop? I just feel like there's a real lack of originality. There's a lot of cannibalism going on with ideas. Like, I mean, how many cute fox sets can you have before you're just saturated? Now, I actually, to be honest, I have at least 2 stamp sets with cute foxes in them, and I may have more that I just have forgotten about. That's completely, totally possible. But, I mean, how many do you need? How many companies have come out with, you know, cute woodland critters or cupcakes or owls? I mean, these trends churn and churn and churn. And then by the time you might actually use that stamp set, the trend could be long gone. So you're probably thinking, great, Lindsay, you have just bummed me out. So now what? What can I do? Well, there are things that you can do to not get burned out and not get sick of making cards or paper crafting or scrapbooking or any other hobby. And I actually wrote some tips down so I wouldn't leave you on a big old bummer of a note, because that's how I was feeling like the other video. It's like, geez, Lindsay, you just totally, like, you know, the Grinch stole Christmas over here, saying that, oh, it's all awful, everything's bad. So I made sure I wrote things down this time so I wouldn't, you know, drone on for 25 minutes. So I think my advice would be, before you buy something, ask yourself, is this going to replace something I already have? Because if you are buying, like I'm so guilty of this. Mason jars. I have so many cute mason jar stamps, but they all can't be my favorite. You know, I go back to the same, you know, couple mason jar stamps, even though I probably have half a dozen. You know, I'm going back to the same 2 mason jar stamps because those are my favorites. They're the right size, they're the right shape. They're easy to cut out by hand if I want to, because, you know, I really don't like dies that match my stamps. I'll use my scan and cut if I feel like it, but a lot of times I'm just, you know, cutting out by hand. Or it'll be like vintage typewriters. I have so many vintage typewriters. And it's kind of like, this is crazy. If I had asked myself this question, what is this going to replace? Is this going to make something you already have way less useful? Then I wouldn't have bought these additional ones. I would have just said, no, I bought one, I picked one, that's what I'm going to have. Because vintage typewriters, I've maybe used them a handful of times, and that's ridiculous for a motif I theoretically love so much, for me to have so many and only use them very infrequently and not for the past couple of years. That's ridiculous. So ask yourself, when you're going to buy something, do I have something like it already that would serve that same purpose that would be just as cute? Maybe you have something that you don't like. Well, I had something, but I settled for it. I don't really like it. I really like this one a lot more. Okay, well, there you go. Maybe consider passing the other one on to a friend and get the new one. But if you realize that you're just adding to a collection, but it's not even going to be your favorite in a collection, like if I saw kind of a cutesy vintage typewriter, that's not going to be I'm not going to like that one as much as the other vintage typewriter stamps that I have. So you're going to ask yourself, is this something different and it's enhancing my collection and making my other things more useful, like it's something totally different that I would use a lot, or is this something that's very much the same of what I already have? Because I think we're drawn to the same things, and we're drawn to what is familiar. And that's another thing. You could think you like certain things just because they're trendy. When you're familiar with something, you will perceive liking it more. So that's like a little psychology thing, and marketers will use that. And I'm not saying these stamp companies are guilty for that, but they do follow trends. So if you cute woodland creatures have been very trendy for the last couple of years, so you're probably going to like them. Plus cute things, we like cute things. We like cute animals. I think it's something ingrained, so we take care of cute little things. You know, we're designed as humans to like cute things. And you're familiar with them, so you're going to like them. So you kind of got to ask yourself, is this something that I personally really like and use, or is this something that I can admire but might not be my style? There's lots of things out there I admire and I see other people use them and they're really beautiful, but it's not my style. I don't enjoy it, so I shouldn't buy those things. So just ask yourself that, because it's totally fine to like something but store it at the store or store it at your friend's house if they like that thing. You know, that's another thing I tell my friends. It's like, well, I bought it, you can, so that means you have it too. You know, you can use mine. That's totally fine, and it, you know, gives us a reason to get together and craft together, which I think is a good thing. So, oh yeah, what will this make obsolete? We kind of talked about that, but like if you're buying a new set of dies, maybe you have a stitched circle die set at home, and you're going to buy a stitched, or you're going to buy a circle dot with like little pokey holes around it, or you're going to buy, you know, a slightly rounded rectangle set, but you see one with a bigger rectangle. You can say, okay, do I really need this? Would it just be easier for me to cut something with a paper trimmer and round the edges? What, you know, is this really going to save me any time? And that's another thing, is when you're buying a new tool or product that is supposedly time-saving, ask yourself, how long is it going to take for you to get it out of your storage? Because you're not going to be leaving it out all the time. So where are you going to put it? How long is it going to take you to get the thing, to find the thing, to use the thing, and to bring it back to your table, versus grabbing a pair of scissors and hand cutting it, or finding some other method that will complete the task that you're trying to do. I know when I was decluttering talk about a long video, my KonMari declutter video a few years ago, when I was decluttering, something I realized is that I had amassed so much ribbon. And because I had done, there was a couple of companies I worked for that were heavily involved in ribbon, I had done so many ribbon projects that I was burnt out using ribbon. I knew that I was going to use ribbon on projects, but I had way more than I could ever use, and I only kept my favorites. And what helped me get rid of even more ribbon, and I have plenty of ribbon, I haven't wanted for any ribbon since I've done that, was washi tape. And when I asked myself, what other product do I have that would do the same job, it was washi tape. And I realized I enjoyed using washi tape a lot more. I'm somebody that does not like really fussy projects, so to peel off a piece of washi tape and stick it down to my project was much easier than for me to get the ribbon, cut the ribbon, find the adhesive for the ribbon, or thread it through some complicated hole to make it, you know, attach to my card. I was much happier to use washi tape. And you may really think it's worth that texture of ribbon on your card to go through that process, and that's totally fine. But something I really learned about myself is that I don't like really fussy, complicated projects. I don't like fussy, complicated dies. I have a couple intricate dies that I really think are beautiful, and occasionally they're worth the work to do. And I purchased a plate for my die cutting machine, my very old 12-year-old die cutting machine that makes cutting them impossible instead of an exercise in futility. And that's fine. That suits my need for any kind of fussy dies. Other than that, I don't want them. I just got rid of a stack of dies probably that tall because they were sent to me unsolicited by some large companies, some large scrapbooking, stamping companies, and they just didn't suit my needs. I was maybe, to keep them in my die storage, which is honestly a shoebox, I don't have a lot, I'm fighting through them. I'm you know, trying to get them out of the way so I can find the actual dies that I want, which are like you know, basic shapes, a basic alphabet, a couple flowers. I mean, I don't really crave more than that. I have an electronic cutter I can use if I want something a little bit more than that. So I can ask myself, if it's, especially if it's a thin die, can I cut that on my electronic cutter, or can I cut something similar? Obviously, I wouldn't, you know, go steal a design and cut it on my cutter, but could I cut something similar that would take its place? Do I have another product that would take its place? Because I know personally I don't like to deal with fussy products. So that's something you can ask yourself too. Also ask yourself, am I just buying the same thing in a different color? Or am I just buying this thing because it has so-and-so's name on it and I think that it's probably better than what I already have? I was actually on Facebook in a stamping group, and somebody posted that there was this product in a store, one of those like discount stores that gets kind of like clearance products and sells them cheap. And she said, I don't know what this is, but should I buy it? It's only $12. And the Peanut Gallery chimed in, yes, you ought to get it, that's worth it. And then the woman bought two, and she didn't even know what it was or what it was used for, but because, you know, it had like a perceived value, and she thought that it would enhance her life, she bought it. it was something she didn't even know existed. Also, make sure it's something that you actually want before you buy it. I know it sounds crazy, but it's so easy to jump on the bandwagons. One bandwagon, and I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty. Well, you guys might not be, but I've been guilty of it. One thing that I have never jumped on the bandwagon with was the stamp positioners, like the Hinge stamp positioners. I just never saw the need to have some big contraption on my table when I'm trying to work, because I get so much stuff going, because I told you I make a mess when I make a card. I get so much stuff out that there's no way I could fit one of those Misty tools or any other stamp positioner on my table while I'm working. Plus, acrylic blocks suit me just fine. I started stamping with wooden blocks, so it's not something I need. It's not something I really desire, and I'm not that fussy. If I'm using a layered stamp set and something's like 32nd of an inch off, it does not bother me one single bit. I don't have a perfectionist bone in my body, and I'm fine with that. Which means another reason I don't want to use the dies that match stamps, because they probably wouldn't match the stamps when I'm done with them, but I'm fine with it. I think it looks fine. I see people like complaining about how their layered stamps aren't lining up online, and I'm like, they look beautiful. I wouldn't even, nobody's going to know that that's not exactly the way it's supposed to look. So, and that's the other thing. I want you to know that you're good enough. Your projects are good enough. Everything you create is from your heart, and you shouldn't feel inadequate because you don't have the newest thing, or you can't keep up with every trend and every stamp release. There are probably 100 stamp companies out there right now that have sprung up over the last couple of years that I've never even heard of, and I'm, online creating every day, and it's just so much, and I'm just afraid that the stamping, the card making, is going to cannibalize itself, kind of like scrapbooking did. Now, I know there's still people that scrapbook, but it's not like it used to be. It just isn't. That's something you can objectively say, and I think that's partially why people got so many things, and then they felt bad for not using it. And when you feel bad about your hobby, then you don't want to do it. You just feel ashamed that you've spent the money, or that you've taken up the space, or you've wasted your time, or you've wasted your resources, and it just makes you feel bad. So if you want to keep kindling that spark of whatever hobby you're doing, whether it being scrapbooking or card making, use your supplies. Buying supplies is not going to make you more creative. It's not going to make you happier. I think we want to chase that high. I think that's a big part of it too. It's not just the peer pressure or seeing what other people are doing. I think we remember how it felt when we bought our first watercolors, or our first stamp, or our first embossing folder, and we tried to recapture that high of, and it wasn't even buying it. We remember what it felt like to use it and to create that first page or that first card, to hand that card to somebody and have them like just light up that, wow, you took the time to make me a card. That's so awesome, and we're chasing that high. We want to find that thing that is going to make us feel like that again, because sometimes you get stuck in a rut and you're just creating, it feels like the same card over and over. I know I'll be like talking to my friends, I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, I feel like I'm just making the same thing over and over again. I just feel so like I can't come up with anything new. And they'll be like, what do you mean? They're gorgeous. They all look different. I can't believe all the different ways you can think of to use this or that. But you can kind of feel stale and feel like, you're not good enough, or if you just had that one product that sparked joy, or that, Con Marie again, that kind of gave you that oomph, then you would be on this creative path again. But it's within you. And I think a lot of times all of this stuff, and I'm looking around my room because I totally need to clean it, and I would show you, except I've got some furniture I just refinished that are gifts that I don't want to show because it's 2 days before Christmas. But that spark is within you, and sometimes it's not, you don't need something new to rekindle that spark. You need to peel away some stuff to rekindle that spark. I hope this makes sense. I tried to write it down in my notebook and make it a little bit more concise and a little bit more easier to understand, because I felt like I was just rambling before and not getting my thoughts across. But basically, I just want you to know that I still love card making. We all get in ruts, and I think getting back to basics, making your own supplies, doing those things that you did when you first fell in love with a hobby is a great way to rekindle that spark. It might feel like buying something new is going to give you that boost, and maybe it will, but oftentimes it's very short-lived. Whereas learning something new, trying something new, creating and exploring are things that will give you continued joy and happiness. And your supplies are already bought and paid for, so it's not going to cost you an extra dime to do that. So just, add to your stash intentionally, and hopefully you can avoid some of the pitfalls that I have run into over the years. I hope this was helpful. I'm sorry I don't have a sketchbook Sunday for you today. This is going to show up on a Sunday. It's supposed to be Saturday night, but I just couldn't get my thoughts organized very well. But I want to thank you so much for watching. I don't know if I'll have another video up before Christmas, so if I don't, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you soon. Till next time, happy crafting.